In one way, when I started working in the field, it was the most rewarding, fulfilling, heart-opening experience of my life. And in another way, it was heartbreaking. And the reason that I'm focusing on that right now is I walked into this field 20 something years sober with my own spiritual path and a knowing, not a belief, but a knowing that we're all whole and perfect, that we're essentially whole and perfect, and there's a place within us that's unharmable. And I walked into an industry that was diagnosing and treating, and honestly had some judgment of clients, and clients coming back to treatment 8 and 9 times, and us asking them what they're going to do differently without us maybe asking what we're going to do differently. And some of the old narratives, I'd been around recovery enough to have heard, your best thinking got you here. You don't know anything. Sit down and shut up. And I didn't really think that was going to happen as much in treatment, but it really was there on some level. And even well-intentioned clinicians were diagnosing and treating, which has a place, but it ended up showing up as looking at clients as broken. And so in that exploration, I developed a series of groups that have now become Conscious Recovery, that were to focus on looking at the person with an addiction as a whole and perfect being rather than a broken being, and then to create groups that would have them experience that, not learn that. When they talk about psychoeducation, and I noticed there were a lot of handouts, and people were being taught concepts and principles and tools and strategies. And I really understood in my own journey when the shift happened was when I did some of the deeper work.
Yeah, and that's really powerful, and I agree 100% that in my experience when I first read Conscious Recovery, it was a really it wasn't um, it wasn't something I processed really in the mind. And I think that's what I loved about it so much my first time reading it. And at the time that I read Conscious Recovery, I didn't read the way I read now. And I read back then to, get something out of it and, learn something and learn a new way to think or whatever. And I remember reading Conscious Recovery and experiencing it from a deeper place, a place of relief and joy and excitement that, I had been a one-on-one counselor, a group facilitator. I oversaw a lot of clinical within residential treatment. And my superiors would come to me often about how soft I was with the clients, how I'm too gentle, how I have too much compassion and too much empathy. And in many ways, I really believed that. I took that on, and I could see it in the way I worked with clients. And there were times where I felt like I needed to come down on my staff or come down on a client because that's the only way they'll get it. And I was coming from a place of force. And when I read Conscious Recovery, that's when I realized that coming from that place was not my idea. That's not who I was here to be. And that, being too soft and too compassionate and all these other things, that was my essential nature. And that if I honed in on what exactly it was that I was trying to accomplish, Conscious Recovery was what kind of set me free and said, yeah, like the person you're sitting with is not broken. There's nothing for you to fix, right? Like we're just people in this experience together. How can we support each other and hold space for each other? And that was the transformation that Conscious Recovery took me through. And I remember getting to the back of the book, the final the final reading of the book, and it brought me to tears. And I remember thinking in that moment where essentially you identify that as a reminder, you are whole and perfect. You deserve a life filled with love, curiosity, joy, vitality. I was reading these things and I thought to myself, wow, like I wonder what that would have created for me in my life if I read that or was told that my first year of recovery, because even though I've been in recovery long term, the first 8 years or so were really brutal, white knuckled. Like, I'm not drinking, I'm not using drugs, but I'm missing something. I'm incomplete. I had all these thoughts and beliefs that I was at the mercy of. And only when I really experienced the message of conscious recovery was I able to reconcile those things with who the world tells me I'm supposed to be and who I know I truly am.
Mm. Wow, so beautiful. And I can share with you what my experience was that was similar to yours. In my first year, first of all, in the beginning, it was just such a gift to be sober. I wasn't having the problems. I was sleeping. I was showing up to work. I was building a network of friends. This was all just absolutely incredible for me. And then I reached a point, and, Jeremy, you and I have talked about this. I reached a point where I was essentially suicidal. I didn't know what to do next. The joy, if you will, or the elation of just being able to go to work and not being hungover and not overdosing and all of those things, really was starting to wear off. And some of what had been buried really deep was starting to emerge. Some of the trauma I hadn't dealt with, my sense of disconnection, the shame I was experiencing. And I was pretty much in a paradigm back then that said something like, all you need to do is not drink today. And if you don't drink today, your life is a success. Now go help someone else. And that worked well for me for a while. And then I found myself at a place where, well, why do I feel like I want to be not on the planet? Why do I want to kill myself? Something else is happening here. And, I met a woman, Mary Helen Brownell, who changed my life. I had sort of been loosely introduced to her, but we started really working together. And she took me on this journey, starting with you're whole and perfect, that you are came into this world as an essential spiritual being, and that is the truth of who and what you are. She didn't really say that in her words. She said that more in the way she was being. I could feel and I could sense that she deeply understood her own wholeness, and that she saw that in me. And I say this a lot, but in her beautiful Southern accent, she would say, "Darling, you're so precious." And I would literally feel sick to my stomach because I could not at that moment take that in. But there was something about her recognizing that and sharing with me that recovery is unlearning, not learning. It's returning to our true nature. It's dismantling all the lies we have built up about ourselves, and all the trauma that we experienced that caused us to separate from that true nature. And all of that resonated for me. And she took me on this journey of really getting down to the root causes of my addiction, starting with that foundation of you're whole and perfect. And so, the reality is that's when conscious recovery was born, 1987, when I was a year sober, and she saved my life, quite frankly. And so, truly, conscious recovery, I'm simply just a mouthpiece for her work. And her work came from her own experience, and then we get to share that. And that's really what this is all about, right? The big vision to have conscious recovery in treatment programs all over the world comes from a place of wanting to share this message because it literally saved my life. And not only did it save my life, and I mean that literally, I did not kill myself, obviously, but it took me on a journey of discovering that I can have a life filled with joy, presence, curiosity, openness. And because of that, because I had an experience of reconnecting with my true nature, the conditions of the world became less significant. I could go through the pain. I could go through the loss. And, I think Pema Chodron says, if you're looking for safety and security, you're on the wrong planet. Right. So, and that she means that as the outer realm, because once we really deeply connect with the truth of who we are, we can navigate, the rough waters, if you will, and the smooth waters from a very, very different point of view.